Seattle's most glamorous gala, champagne, violins, diamonds flashing under the lights. But while the elite toasted their wealth, I was seconds from being dragged out by security, until a cold-eyed billionaire slipped his arm around my waist and whispered, "She's with me." In that instant, I became his fake girlfriend and his only alibi. If you've ever felt dismissed, betrayed, or made to feel invisible, or maybe you've experienced the deepest loneliness or that unbearable pain of losing those you love most, share it. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because maybe the next story will remind you of your own strength. The chandeliers above Benaroya Hall glittered like frozen constellations, raining light across gowns worth more than my annual salary. Waiters floated between tables with silver trays, their polished shoes silent against the marble. From the outside, it was elegance. From the inside, for me, it felt like a battlefield. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. Podcasters like me usually sit behind laptops, hunting scandals in spreadsheets, not under spotlights where hedge fund wives measure you in one glance. But I had a lead. Whispers that Sterling Maritime's charitable foundations were nothing more than laundering funnels. If I could stay inside long enough, maybe I'd catch a crack in their perfect facade. Then came the snap of fingers. Sharp. Commanding. A security guard turned toward me, his radio already buzzing. I froze, pulse climbing. The badge hanging from my neck screamed press. And in this room, that was poison. Before I could retreat, a shadow fell across me. A hand, steady, cool, decisive, slid lightly to the small of my back. "She's with me." The words dropped like an iron curtain. The guard hesitated, blinked, then melted away into the crowd. My breath tangled in my throat as I turned. Ethan Sterling. I'd seen his face on magazine covers, CNBC segments, those glossy spreads where he never once smiled. And now he was close, enough for me to see the faint scar at his jawline, the cold precision in his steel-gray eyes. I opened my mouth, ready to argue, ready to insist I didn't need rescuing. But then he leaned closer, voice low, almost brushed against my ear. "They're circling. Pretend you're with me, or this night gets ugly, for both of us." My instinct screamed run. Every training, every lecture at journalism school told me, never get too close to your subject. But around us, the tide had already shifted. The same eyes that moments ago flickered with suspicion, now burned with curiosity. "Oh, so she's with him." I forced a brittle smile, lifting my champagne flute like this was all some inside joke. "Fine," I whispered back, my tone sharp enough to cut glass. "But don't think for a second I'm here to play your girlfriend." His lips curved, just barely. "Then think of it as mutual protection." The band struck up a sweeping waltz. Couples glided onto the floor, gowns swishing, diamonds catching light, and there I was, seated beside Ethan Sterling, a man Wall Street feared and worshipped in equal measure, pretending for the cameras. Except the strangest thing was this. With his arm draped casually across my chair, with his profile carved sharp against the candlelight, I couldn't tell if the pretending had already gone too far. The music swelled, violins climbing toward the ceiling like a prayer too polished to be sincere. Ethan guided me, not with force, but with that effortless authority men like him were born wearing, out through the side doors. We stepped onto a balcony overlooking downtown Seattle, where the night air was cooler, laced with the scent of rain on steel. For a moment, I thought he'd vanish into silence, leave me standing there with my pulse still rattling from the close, call inside. But instead, he turned, leaning against the railing, gray eyes fixed not on me, but on the glittering skyline. "Let's skip the polite small talk," he said evenly. "You don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Yet here we are, pretending. I folded my arms, masking nerves with defiance. You're assuming I came here to play dress-up. He finally looked at me, and God, it felt like being pinned by a searchlight. You're here because you're curious, maybe for a story, maybe for something else. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. I need someone who looks like they belong at my side, at least for the next few weeks. My laugh came out sharper than I intended. So that's your pitch? Be your fake girlfriend so the vultures stop whispering? His expression didn't shift, though a glint sparked behind his composure. Shareholders don't like men who eat alone. Competitors exploit. Weakness, the board wants me domesticated. Appearances matter, Miss Quinn. And you, he let the sentence trail, studying me as though testing the weight of my silence. I hated the part of me that leaned forward, just a fraction, hungry for the rest of that thought. And me what? I pressed. You know how to hold your ground. You don't melt under stares. You'd make it believable. Believable. The word snagged in my chest. Because what he couldn't know was that beneath my tailored blazer, I carried a recorder. And in my head, I carried threads of an investigation that could gut his empire. Do you always recruit strangers off balconies? I asked lightly, though my voice wavered at the edges. No. His answer was immediate, unflinching. Just the ones who already draw attention without trying. I stared at him, the hum of traffic below mixing with the pulse hammering in. My ears. Every rule told me to walk away. Distance was safety. But another voice, the reckless one, whispered of access, of doors opening, of answers to questions my editor had begged me to chase. It was a deal with the devil, packaged in a black suit and silver tie. And still, when Ethan Sterling extended his hand, steady and cold under the city lights, I didn't move. Not yet. But my heart knew. I was already standing on the edge of something dangerous. The very next evening, the game began. Ethan didn't offer a slow introduction or a trial run. He threw me straight into the fire. The venue was an art auction in Pioneer Square, a cavernous gallery where spotlights bathed abstract canvases in warm gold. Couples drifted in diamonds and tuxedos, champagne glasses balanced like props. It wasn't my world, not even close. Ethan's hand rested lightly at the small of my back as we entered. It wasn't possessive, more like choreography. To the onlookers, we were seamless. To me, every cell screamed, "Remember, this is fake." "Smile," he murmured as camera flashes snapped. "The wolves only bite if they smell blood." I arched a brow, whispering back, "Funny, because I thought you fed them." His lips curved, the barest shadow of amusement. "Careful, Harper. They'll think you enjoy this." I forced a smile, just wide enough for the photographers, and shifted my gaze to the auctioneer prepping at the podium. But my ears caught something else. Two men at the next table, voices lowered but urgent. "Fund transfer hit the Caymans last week. Calder's got it locked down." I stiffened. Calder. Robert Calder, the CFO of Sterling Maritime, Ethan's right hand. My recorder hummed quietly inside my clutch, capturing every syllable. A waiter drifted past with hors d'oeuvres. I snagged a glass of wine to mask my tension. Ethan, of course, noticed. His eyes tracked me, unblinking. "Don't vanish into your head," he said under his breath. "If you look bored, they'll smell it." I tilted my glass toward him, hiding a grimace. "Then keep me entertained, Sterling." "Isn't that what fake boyfriends are for?" He chuckled once, low, dangerous. "Trust me, I haven't even started." The auction began. Bids volleyed through the air, numbers climbing like rockets. I nodded at introductions, smiled at passing. "Compliments. You two make such a striking couple." And every time my voice wavered, Ethan slipped in with a quip or a perfectly timed glance that steadied the performance. Still, my mind worked double time. Each handshake, each whispered aside was data. Faces matched with names I'd seen in leaked filings. Donation envelopes tucked beneath seats looked suspiciously like coded ledgers. By the time the final painting was sold, my cheeks ached from smiling, but my pulse thrummed with something sharper than nerves. For the crowd, I was Ethan Sterling's girlfriend, graceful, composed, another accessory to his empire. But for me, every sip of champagne, every feigned laugh, was one step deeper, into an investigation that could either destroy him or me. The auction wound down, applause rising as the final gavel struck. Guests trickled toward the dessert spread, laughter echoing through the vaulted gallery. I slipped away under the excuse of powdering my nose, but really I was scanning. My journalist's instincts had me tracing donation envelopes tucked into side tables, cross-checking names with the whispers I'd overheard. Then I saw it, an abandoned program near the coat check, pages creased where someone had scrawled initials. RCE, BLC Holdings. My pulse jumped. BLC, the offshore shell I'd been digging into for weeks. And the initials? Robert Calder. Before I could snap a photo, a shadow eclipsed the paper. Ethan. He plucked it up smoothly, sliding it into his jacket pocket. Curiosity is a dangerous look on you, Harper. I forced a tight smile. And paranoia is a worse one on you. It was just a program. His gaze lingered, weighing, probing. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd call my bluff. But instead he offered his arm. Come on. If you vanish too long, they'll start inventing stories neither of us want printed. Reluctantly, I slipped my hand into the crook of his elbow. His sleeve was warm from body heat, the fabric taut with understated power. We walked back toward the main hall, and just as I prepared another polite mask, Ethan leaned close. You're stiff, he murmured, voice low enough that only I could hear. Relax, or they'll know we're faking. I shot him a side glance. Maybe because we are faking. His reply came not in words but in action. At the dessert table, under the flicker of camera flashes, he reached for a chocolate truffle, then offered it to me directly, pressing it lightly against my lips. The room seemed to pause. Conversations dipped, eyes sharpened. In that breathless instant, I felt the weight of expectation. The girlfriend accepts. The couple looks real. So I did. I bit into the truffle, sweet ganache melting across my tongue, while his gaze held steady on mine. Heat rose to my cheeks, not just from the performance, but from something I refused to name. Gasps and murmurs rippled. They're perfect together, someone whispered. Perfect. If only they knew. Because even as my pulse raced from Ethan's nearness, the letters BLC burned in my mind. And worse, when I later scrolled through my phone in the cab ride home, an anonymous email waited in my inbox. Attached was a PDF of wire transfers, hundreds of thousands funneled offshore. The signature block glared up at me. Ethan Sterling. The ferry's horn bellowed as we pulled away from the Seattle dock, the skyline shrinking into a shimmer of glass, and steel behind us. The air was sharp, salted by the Puget Sound, carrying the kind of chill that crawls straight into your bones. I clutched my coat tighter, scanning the upper deck for the man who had insisted on meeting me here. The whistleblower called himself Orion. All I had was a burner number, 3 cryptic texts, and the promise of a lead that could break Sterling Maritime wide open. My stomach knotted, half with fear, half with anticipation. I spotted him near the railing, hood pulled low, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. He didn't look up when I approached. You, Quinn? His voice was gravel, roughened by the wind. Yes. He flicked the cigarette into the waves, his shoulders tightening. Your boy Sterling. He's not just moving cargo. The donations, the art auctions, their laundering covers. Money slips through the Caymans, comes back washed clean. My pulse raced. "And you can prove this?" He nodded once, slipping a folded sheet from his jacket. But before I could take it, the sound of heavy boots echoed against the deck. 2 men emerged from the stairwell, eyes locked on us. Their steps were too deliberate, too synchronized to be coincidence. Orion swore, under his breath, shoving the paper into my hand. "They followed me. You need to—" His words cut off as one man lunged. Instinct screamed. I spun, heel catching on the slick metal grating. For one terrifying second, the world tilted, the black churn of the sound yawning below. Then a hand caught me, strong, unyielding. "Ethan." He hauled me upright in one swift motion, his arm cinched around my waist. For a heartbeat, the closeness stole my breath. His scent, sandalwood and sea air, mingling with the panic in my lungs. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice like steel. The men froze, recognition flickering in their eyes. No one wanted to make a move against Ethan Sterling in public. With a muttered curse, they retreated, disappearing back into the stairwell. By the time I turned, Orion was gone, vanished into the crowd of passengers. All I had left was the crumpled paper in my fist, damp with sweat. Ethan's gaze dropped to it. "What did he give you?" I stuffed it into my pocket, forcing a brittle laugh. A warning not to wear heels on wet decks. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he kept his arm lightly at my back as the ferry carried us toward Bainbridge, where the lights of the island flickered like distant secrets. And in my pocket, a single piece of evidence burned hotter than the cold air around us. The car door shut with a muffled thud, sealing us in a cocoon of leather and shadow. Outside, the ferry terminal lights blurred past the tinted glass. Inside, silence pressed heavier than the city's rain clouds. I sat rigid, the folded paper Orion had given me burning a hole in my pocket. Ethan sat across the seat divider, jacket draped open, one hand resting on his knee with practiced calm. But his jaw ticked, a subtle pulse of anger beneath the polished exterior. For 5 long minutes, nothing but the low hum of the engine filled the space. I almost convinced myself he hadn't noticed. Almost. Then a chirp broke the silence, high-pitched, mechanical. My blood froze. The recorder. I lunged for my clutch, but Ethan was faster. His fingers closed over the bag, steel and ice. He pulled it open with deliberate patience, extracting the small device I thought I'd silenced. Its red light blinked like a taunt between us. He didn't raise his voice. That was worse. "Recording me, Harper?" My throat went dry. "It's habit, background notes, for the podcast." His eyes cut to me, sharp enough to make me shrink against the seat. Habit or strategy? I tried for steady. Failed. "Look, I don't use everything I record. It's just insurance?" he interrupted, the word cold, precise. "You walk into my life uninvited, pretend to play the part, and the whole time you're collecting sound bites?" Heat flushed my skin, shame mixing with stubbornness. "You dragged me into this performance, not the other way around. Forgive me if I'd rather have evidence than your word." The air thickened. For a flicker of a second, something vulnerable passed through his eyes. Hurt, maybe. But it was gone as quickly as it came, buried under stone. "Do you trust anyone, Quinn?" His voice was quiet, almost weary. I swallowed hard. "Not in your world." The car slowed at a light, shadows slicing across his face. For the first time since I'd met him, Ethan Sterling looked less like a fortress and more like a man building walls faster than I could climb. He clicked off the recorder, slipping it back into my clutch with surgical precision. "Then let's be clear. You're either with me or you're against me. But if you're against me, don't expect me to keep pulling you back from the edge." The driver accelerated, the city reappearing in flashes of neon. I stared out the window, jaw clenched, Orion's crumpled note cutting into my palm. For the first time, I wondered if this charade wasn't protecting me at all. Maybe it was destroying the fragile line between truth and betrayal. The newsroom's glow had long since dimmed when I finally slid into my battered hatchback. My editor's words still echoed. 72 hours to deliver, or Roberts gets the story. Pressure was one thing. Fear was another. Tonight, I felt both, pressing in. Rain streaked across the windshield as I pulled onto Queen Anne Avenue, climbing the steep hill toward home. Street lamps blurred in the wet glass, my wipers squealing against the drizzle. For a moment, I almost relaxed, alone at last. No billionaires, no stage smiles. Just me and the road. Then I tapped the brakes at the intersection. Nothing. The pedal sank to the floor, useless, my heart vaulting into my throat. The car jolted as I yanked the wheel, tires shrieking against slick asphalt. A horn blared. Headlights roared past in a flash of white. Somehow, miraculously, I skidded into a shallow curb, the car shuddering to a halt inches from a light pole. Breathless, shaking, I gripped the wheel until my knuckles went white. This wasn't coincidence. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. With trembling hands, I swiped the screen. A blocked number. One message. "Stop digging, Quinn. Or next time you don't walk away." My chest tightened, the words searing like acid. Whoever sent it knew my name, my work, my exact position on that hill. My world had just shrunk into a trap. I fumbled for my clutch, pulling out the recorder Ethan had returned earlier. For once, it offered no comfort. If anything, it mocked me. Evidence meant little if I was too dead to use it. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, an image. The outside of my apartment building, shot from across the street. My apartment. Window glowed faintly in the photo, blinds half closed. I gasped, twisting in my seat, scanning the shadows beyond the rain-slick road. Nothing. No figures. No cars. Just darkness pressing in, heavy and watchful. I wanted to call Ethan. The thought flared before I could kill it. His number burned in my contacts, a name that had become equal parts lifeline and danger. But after the recorder incident, would he even answer? Would he care? With shaking fingers, I started the car again, steering slowly down side streets until I reached a crowded gas station. Only then, under fluorescent safety, did my pulse begin to ease. The message still glowed on. My phone, cruel in its simplicity. Stop digging. But staring at it, my fear hardened into something sharper. They wanted me scared. They wanted me silent. And that meant, finally, undeniably, I was getting close. By morning, the city looked the same. Coffee carts steaming, buses groaning up steep hills, joggers pounding the damp pavement. But inside, something had shifted. Fear hadn't vanished. It had calcified into defiance. The message still glared on my phone. Stop digging, Quinn. I replayed it over and over while scrolling through spreadsheets on my laptop at the newsroom. Each column of numbers felt like a taunt, a puzzle daring me to solve it. Calder's name surfaced again and again in shadow accounts, offshore subsidiaries, donations funneled through shell nonprofits. If I quit now, I'd hand victory to the men who sabotaged my breaks. If I stayed in, I might lose my job, my safety. Maybe more. I pressed my palms flat against the desk. So be it. The door to Kara's office creaked open. She leaned out, sharp glasses catching the fluorescent light. Harper, you've got less than a week. If you're going to make enemies, at least make the story worth it. Her words weren't comfort. They were marching orders, and I accepted them. That night, I left the newsroom with the note from Orion tucked into my coat pocket. The air was damp and heavy, the streets humming with neon reflections. I cut through a narrow alley toward my apartment, my senses prickling eye. Flicker of movement in the shadows. Footsteps. Quick, then gone. My breath hitched. I spun, clutching my keys between my fingers like a weapon. No one. Just the faint scent of smoke on the breeze. I hurried on, heart hammering, until I reached my building. But when I fumbled with the lock, I noticed something tucked under the doormat, a folded slip of paper. I knelt, palms clammy, and unfolded it. 2 words, scrawled in ink. Drive safe. My breath caught. I whipped around, scanning the empty street. My pulse thudded as the realization sank in. Someone had been there. Not a threat this time, a warning, and the handwriting, angular, precise. I'd seen it before, on place cards at the gala, on sterling maritime documents. Ethan. Heat flushed. Through me. Fury, confusion, and, God help me, relief. He was watching. Even after the recorder. Even after I'd betrayed his trust. For a long moment, I stood frozen. The city's hum muffled around me. Then I tucked the note into my pocket, lips pressed, into a thin line. If Ethan Sterling thought I'd walk away now, he was wrong. His world was dangerous, yes. But it was also where the truth lived, and I was done pretending I didn't want both. The Soto warehouse gleamed like a cathedral of fire. Inside, furnaces roared and molten glass shimmered into sculpture. Tonight, though, the art was just camouflage. The invitation list read like a ledger of Seattle's most powerful financiers. Exactly the circle Calder moved through. I arrived alone, a borrowed dress clinging damp against my skin after the drizzle outside. The room pulsed with light, chandeliers of blown glass, their tendrils curling like frozen flames. Guests drifted between displays, sipping wine and murmuring praise. But my eyes weren't on the art. They were on the plaques. At first glance, each bore the name of a donor, but when I leaned closer, a pattern emerged. 3-letter codes etched discreetly beneath. RCH, BLC, Cal, Ledger Marks, Calder's Marks. My pulse quickened. I snapped discrete photos, tucking my phone against my clutch as if texting. Each code matched entities I'd traced in offshore filings. It wasn't art appreciation. It was a map of money laundering, hiding in plain sight. Enjoying yourself? The voice cut through the hum. My blood iced. Mick Torres, Calder's fixer, stood in the shadow of a towering red sculpture, his bulk blotting out the light. His smirk carried no warmth. Funny seeing you here, Quinn. Didn't take you for a fan of blown glass? I forced a thin smile, steadying my voice. Art's a universal language, isn't it? He stepped closer, his cologne acrid, his eyes sharp. Depends on the translation. Some of us read numbers better than colors. His gaze flicked to my clutch, my phone, my evidence. Panic prickled hot along my skin. I needed an exit. Now. I let out a laugh. Too high, too quick. Well, you caught me. I was just looking for the restroom and got lost in all this color. Mick tilted his head, unconvinced, but before he could press, the fire alarm shrieked. Lights flickered red, guests startled, wine glasses clattering onto the floor. In the chaos, I slipped past him, heels clicking across concrete, pulse hammering. The crowd surged toward the exits, smoke drifting from a furnace flare. I didn't stop until I burst into the damp night, lungs dragging in the cold air. Only then did I check my phone. The last photo, grainy but clear, captured a plaque with Calder's initials beside BLC Holdings, proof. But my relief was short-lived. My phone buzzed with a new message from a blocked number. "You're in over your head, Quinn. Last warning." I glanced back at the warehouse doors, heart pounding. Mick was still inside, watching, waiting, and for the first time, I wondered if tonight's fire alarm hadn't been an accident at all. The docks at Pier 36 pulsed with a quiet menace. Shipping containers loomed in stacks 3 stories high, their steel sides slick with salt spray and rain. Floodlights painted everything in harsh white, casting long shadows across the asphalt. This wasn't just cargo. It was the beating heart of Sterling Maritime. And tonight, it was Calder's stage. I tightened my earpiece. The federal agent beside me, black windbreaker, eyes alert, gave a curt nod. "We stay dark until the handoff. You get the confirmation, we move." The recorder inside my jacket hummed against my ribs. Evidence, my safety net, or maybe my death warrant. A truck rumbled into the yard, brakes hissing. Calder stepped down, immaculate even in the grit of the port. His smirk carried the confidence of a man who'd hidden too many crimes in plain sight. Mick flanked him, bulkier than ever, scanning the shadows like a predator. My stomach knotted. Calder's voice carried easily in the night. "Move the crates into storage C. Label them as medical relief. No questions, no mistakes." Workers moved to obey. One crate cracked open under a forklift's rough grip, and for a split second the contents gleamed. Artwork, priceless and unlogged. A perfect vessel for dirty money. The agent whispered in my ear, "We've got enough. Pull back." But my instincts screamed otherwise. Not yet. I needed Calder's own words tying him to BLC. So I stepped forward, heels clicking on wet concrete, drawing their eyes. Mick cursed. Calder's smirk faltered. "Ms. Quinn," he drawled. I should have known a reporter would sniff her way here. I forced a smile. "Funny thing about the truth, Calder. It doesn't like being buried in crates." He laughed, cold and sharp. "You think anyone will believe you?" That was when the red light blinked on my recorder. I angled it toward him. "They don't have to believe me. Just your voice." His eyes darkened. "Take it." Mick lunged. I stumbled back, the recorder slipping from my grasp, clattering against the concrete. My scream tore through the air. And then, headlights cut across the dock. Black SUVs surged in. Agents spilled out, weapons drawn. "FBI, hands in the air." Chaos erupted, workers scattered. Calder froze, but Mick shoved toward me, knife glinting. Before I could react, a figure slammed into him, Ethan. He wrenched the blade aside, the 2 men crashing into the side of a crate. I grabbed the recorder, heart pounding as agents swarmed. Mick was pinned. Calder was shoved against his own container, wrists cuffed behind his back. The night roared with shouts, sirens, and the crash of waves against steel. My knees buckled, but Ethan's hand gripped my arm, steadying me. For the first time, his voice shook. "You shouldn't have been here." I swallowed hard, clutching the recorder to my chest. "Neither should you. But now the truth is." 2 days later, the steps of the King County Courthouse were a battlefield of cameras. Reporters jostled shoulder to shoulder, microphones raised like weapons. Headlines already blazed across the city. Sterling Maritime CFO indicted in international laundering scheme. I stood off to the side, clutching my press badge like it was both shield and scarlet letter. Calder had been charged on 12 federal counts: wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. The evidence from the port sting was airtight: coded plaques, offshore transfers, and his own voice on my recorder. The only question now was Ethan. When he emerged from the courthouse, flanked by attorneys, the crowd erupted. Shouts, camera flashes, the deafening chaos of a city starving for blood. Ethan, however, was calm. His suit sharp, his posture steel. But his eyes, those gray eyes, searched through the mob until they found me. The U.S. attorney spoke first, reading the charges, naming Calder as the architect of the scheme. Our investigation confirms that Mr. Ethan Sterling was not involved, and in fact, cooperated with law enforcement to bring these crimes to light. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Microphones swung toward Ethan. Mr. Sterling, do you have any comment? He stepped to the podium, his voice steady, but edged with something raw. For years, my name has been linked to ruthless ambition, to cold decisions. But these past weeks, someone forced me to face what matters more than reputation. The truth. Reporters leaned in. Flashbulbs exploded. And then he did the unthinkable. He extended his hand toward me. The crowd twisted, following his gaze. My heart lodged in my throat. Slowly, painfully, I moved forward, each step punctuated by the storm of questions around us. Ethan's hand was warm, steady, as he pulled me beside him. This woman, he said firmly, risked everything to expose corruption. She nearly lost her life. She made me believe in something beyond survival. And for that, she has my respect. And more than that. Whispers rippled through the crowd, then applause. Hesitant at first, swelling like a wave. I blinked hard against the sting in my eyes. My instinct screamed to stay guarded, but my heart betrayed me. I leaned closer, whispering under the noise. You don't owe me anything. Ethan. His jaw flexed, his voice low. Only for me. No. But I want everything with you. And in that moment, under the blinding flash of cameras, the chaos of justice being served, I realized the pretending was over. The storm of headlines eventually ebbed, but the city's noise still clung to us, as if it couldn't quite let go. That's why Ethan suggested Discovery Park, the bluff where Puget Sound stretched out, endless and blue, the kind of place that silences even restless hearts. The late afternoon sun painted the sky with streaks of gold and rose. I stood at the edge of the overlook, the salt wind tugging at my hair, my recorder left behind for once. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't chasing proof. I was just breathing. Ethan walked up beside me, his footsteps slower than usual as though he'd finally allowed himself to be human. In his hand, he carried a small velvet box. My stomach flipped, but when he opened it, there wasn't a ring, only a sleek fountain pen, silver, my initials engraved along its barrel. It's not a contract, he said, almost smiling. It's a reminder to listen, to write, to tell the truth, even when it cuts too close. I took the pen, fingers trembling. And if the truth cuts you? He held my gaze, steady and unflinching. Then I'll take the wound, but I'd rather bleed honestly than live behind masks. Something inside me cracked. The wall I'd built brick by brick through every deadline, every betrayal. I'd come into his world pretending, convinced I could guard my heart while chasing the story. Instead, I'd found a man who scared me, not because he was ruthless, but because he was willing to be real. I drew in a shaky breath. So where does that leave us, Sterling? Still pretending? Or... His hand brushed mine, warm against the chill. No pretending, not anymore. The weight of it settled between us, equal parts terrifying and liberating. I let out a laugh, wet with unshed tears. Guess that means we'll both have to learn how to be flawed in public. He chuckled softly, pulling me against him as the wind whipped around us. Maybe that's the point. Perfection never told the truth. People do. I pressed my head against his shoulder, watching the water glitter far below. And in that quiet moment, the lesson crystallized. We spend so much of our lives pretending to be tougher, colder, stronger than we really are, pretending to fit into rooms where whispers cut sharper than knives. But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop performing and start believing. In truth, in imperfection, in each other. The sun dipped into the horizon. Ethan whispered, "Forever starts here." And for once, I didn't doubt a word.